everybody.
Hi. Hello. Look, we have a trio.
That's right. We could be nice and make the screen like we usually do and freak him out a little bit and tell him he gets to be the cream and the Oreo, but we kind of save that to the single boys. they seem to enjoy that.
Every boy's dream. That's all good. That's all
good. So Andy tells us he's been traveling, y'all, and doing all kinds of neat things. But before we go down that road and let him take off on all the good news that he has to share with you, remember, give us a rumble, a thumbs up. We are streaming on YouTube and going to try to leave it that way tonight, and Facebook Live. So if you come on, jump on and tell us if you have questions. We would love to take those while we have someone that is intelligent to answer those money questions, because CJ and I know how to spend it. We're pretty good at making it, but we definitely aren't the best at figuring out how we want to invest it right now, because the world is different, y'all. And so y'all make sure you send us those questions. I can see them on Rumble, and we can see them on Facebook and from YouTube. So all the way across the board. Anything else, CJ? Am I missing anything?
No, I mean, I really didn't have a whole lot other than the verdict's out still for tomorrow night, if I'm going to be able to be on or not. So I may be able to be on. I'm not sure yet. That's going to be a last minute thing, depending on who's at my house and who is not on my house. And
there may be enough at your house that you do want to come on and drink and just shut the door and leave them in the other room.
Right. And two other just quick things. If you've sent me an email, I've responded back just like now, or I'll respond back tonight. I haven't been home almost all day, literally at all today. And hopefully tonight at 10 o'clock, I will be doing a 15-minute live on the upcoming program that starts on the 15th on my personal channel. And that's all I've got.
Awesome. Yay. Andy, you are going on my personal Redneck Rhapsody channel right now. So you'll be speaking to some of my folks that might find us that has decided they like to do crafts and DIY and drink and travel. So I'm just letting you know your audience has been expanded this evening rather than just to our a Patriot channel. So with that being said, talk to us, man.
Well, it's good to be back. It's nice to see you both. As you mentioned, I have been all over the place, spending time speaking at Rick Rule's convention. For those of you who don't know, he's kind of the godfather of the mining share industry and has a huge following, has been very kind to me. I have worked with his clients for 20 plus years, including when he was the CEO and chairman of Sprott USA, and it's been a distinct honor. So I certainly wouldn't miss any of his shows, especially since it was 10 minutes away here in Boca from where I live. And then I followed, I sponsored Big Swear, one of my favorite people that I've ever known in this industry, his road show, and traveled in an RV with he and his wife from Texas to Oklahoma City, spent some time meeting people and talking in Austin and then in Oklahoma City, and found myself taking the red eye back home, and here I am with you guys, and looking forward to it. So lots going on, no question about it, and happy to answer any questions that that your folks have, and certainly can talk about what we talked about last time, what's happened since then, take a look at what's going on in the economy, and see where it takes us.
Well, we certainly see from the manipulated stock market, the numbers all over the place. Noticed it was up, close to 500 points today, and then down 500. And it's just, I think volatile is an understatement, I think that's a word that people who don't know what's going on would use more frequently. I'm just using that because that's the common word, right? As far as that going on. But when you know what you know, you kind of know.
One of the things that we see happening, tremendous amount of insider selling, and the insiders, that being the corporate executives who own shares in whatever companies are being traded, by law have to disclose the amount of shares that they are selling. So while the American public believes that the Fed is going to engineer a soft landing and is, really not capitulating stock portfolios yet, regardless of the downdraft that we've seen. The insiders are using that as an excuse to quietly exit stage left. And this is something that people should really keep an eye on, is that the insiders, the people who certainly understand what's going on with the dynamics of the company, with the economy, the way that it all interacts with stock share price, is it's bleak, because they're all selling as the public is buying and going to be left holding the bag, as I believe ultimately interest rates rise to a level that will greatly damage the psyche and the valuations of a stock market that has made it almost impossible to find fair value in price discovery.
Right.
And as we talked about before, my belief that the growing coalition of countries moving away from the dollar to join the BRICS nations, it's growing by the day, including Saudi Arabia, who has now made a decision to contemplate, anyway, joining the BRICS nations. There is no contemplation when you announce it publicly. It's already written up. It's just a matter of how it's implemented. And the fragility of the system, in that what makes the dollar the world reserve currency, as we spoke about, is the protection of the Saudi kingdom. Saudi is now protected by Russia and is now joining the BRICS nations. One of the things that's come out since we have spoke last is that the BRICS nations announced a new world reserve currency that they are rolling out.
Wow.
And this fits part and parcel with what I've been talking about. And I ultimately believe it will be on the heels of the Chinese digital yuan, which is approaching 20 billion in successful transactions on the Belt Road Initiative we spoke of, the largest infrastructure project in human history, starting at the Olympics and through the Belt Road to where we are now. You have a beta testing of a new central bank digital currency that works. You have a coalition of all the countries moving against the West that represent almost 90% of human population. And these are countries that accumulate all hard assets like gold, which was revalued a tier 1 asset. We talked about that. But if this were a chess game, you got one or two moves left before it's checkmate. And, when you see President Biden go to Saudi Arabia, a guy who hasn't even had the respect to go to the Mexican-Texas border, he wasn't going to ask for oil. This is a country in this new ridiculous plan that they just stuffed through, the anti-inflation plan, they call. They're ratifying tons and tons of money to ratify their, or pledging tons of money to ratify their new green agenda. We are destroying Saudi Arabia's way of life. We're moving away from oil and the combustion engine. And he wasn't going there to ask for more oil. He was going there to beg them not to join the BRICS. If Saudi Arabia makes this announcement that we are joining the BRICS, we're going to open up oil sales and other currencies, I think you see a massive wave of dollar dumping globally, which immediately spikes interest rates. The Federal Reserve, no matter what they say, is not interested in raising rates. That's something we talked about on your last time I was here. I said, look, they're not going to raise rates. They don't want to be in the history books. So let me read some numbers to you that kind of, I think, supports that statement that I made. In the last 19 weeks, the Federal Reserve has reduced its holdings of government debt treasuries by only $40 billion and of mortgage security by $21 billion. They promised to do $60 billion a month, I believe, in treasuries, and $30 billion in mortgage-backed securities. They were talking of shedding $95 billion a month. And in the last 19 weeks, all that they have done is $61 billion, not even 1 month's worth of sales. And see, the thing of it is that by selling those assets off their balance sheets, those are all interest rate sensitive assets that, as they're sold, interest rates go up. And so it's not just raising the federal funds rate willy-nilly, pussyfooting around the way that they have to only 2.25% with inflation at 9%. Actually, Biden today told us there was 0% inflation in July. I wonder what he is smoking.
Right?
Inflation was 9% in July, certainly not 0. But point of it is that the Fed, who is supposedly getting tough on inflation, is only raising rates, a third of what inflation is at. So, your negative real return of 6.5%. We are in a very precarious financial position. And I think the Federal Reserve is a sideshow. I think that what's going to happen to this country will relate directly to global divesting of dollars and what that's going to do to interest rates. And the villain that we now can point to being the BRICS nations. And I think that's really where we are. So in any case, what we are seeing is a situation where the Reserve is not quantitatively tightening. And I think they realize that by doing so, they are going to push rates up to a level that will really start to affect stocks, bonds, and real estate. Now, already you can see that the real estate market is beginning to take it on the chin. You're seeing a tremendous amount of inventory. You're seeing rates at the federal funds rate of only 2.25% has the 30-year mortgage at 7%. Well, what happens if they raise rates to get tough on inflation? And the only way to do that is to raise them above the level of inflation. So they'd have to raise the corporate or the federal funds rate to 9, 10, 11%. You're talking 30-year mortgages at 13, 14, 15, 20%. You're talking blowing up the real estate market to the nth degree. And when you factor that in with a higher cost of money, where the cost of money has over doubled in the last year, and the house prices really haven't started to come down yet. People are hanging on for those higher prices. You're talking a real estate market that is really suffering right now. That's just phase one. I think when rates really start to rise, you start to really negatively impact the mother of all bubbles. That's the bond market. And of course, that brings down with it the stock market. This is a time, you guys, where people need to focus on return on your money, much less than return of your money. And I think standing in harm's way in traditional assets right now, hoping for a recovery when you see the insiders copiously selling on any strength is an ominous sign. I'm not optimistic as most people might be.
Can you hear me okay? Because I feel like I'm freezing too.
Yeah. No, you're not. I hear you fine.
Okay. So one of the questions that I have for those individuals who are invested traditionally, how do you dumb this down? And I don't want to say the word convince, but how do you educate to the point where they are willing to do a little bit of non-traditional stuff and invest some things and explain to them what is happening? Or for those individuals, say, who are in a position where they've got family monies and they can't move it, because I've talked to, without mentioning names, I'm gonna just give a little information. So growing up, my family was associated with a lot of big companies that you see, snack companies that you see in the grocery stores and vending machines. I'm from Central Pennsylvania, the snack capital of the world. Okay, so when I have had conversations with friends my age who are invested traditionally or have been in a family with a large amount of wealth handed down to them, how do you open up their minds to trying to preserve some of that or transitioning that? How do you go about that when they look at you and saying, they're like, no, I got so many millions in the stock market, I'm good, I don't want to buy this and that? How do you approach that?
Well, I mean, for one, from the start of the pandemic, the Federal Reserve has printed more money than it has in the entire existence of the United States. When you talk about trying to find price discovery, asset prices have been blown up to unreal levels. For example, from the founding of the U.S., it took almost 230 years to print first $6 trillion in this country. But in just a matter of 18 months, the U.S. government has printed more than that $6 trillion. And so you're talking the money supply increasing by 41%. That's ridiculous. I mean, those kind of things don't happen. Right. And what happened is this was the largest monetary explosion that has ever occurred, certainly in the United States. And all of that money creation have found its assets where hedge funds can borrow next to nothing and accumulate assets, blow the values of those assets up ridiculously, make untold fortunes, make huge bonuses for the banks they work for, and has created an environment where now these insiders who have blown these asset prices up to all-time highs are leaving. But if you want to talk about, you know, what that looks like, how that actually happened, and what the debt burden is to this country as rates rise, look at it this way: if you earned $1 per second, every second, it would take you 900 and almost 970,000 years, just under 967,000 years to pay off the U.S. federal debt. If you realize that 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago, that's discounting the $30 trillion federal debt. That ignores Medicare, Medicaid, government and military pensions, all the off-balance sheet obligations that we have that put us in debt somewhere in the neighborhood of $140 trillion. And those are numbers that can never be paid off as interest rates rise. And so you are talking about a system where if interest rates rise, if by market forces, by the things that I've talked about, where the dollar losing its petro reserve status comes into play, then you are looking at a situation where it's a religious experience in this country. I think you don't have to go any further than to say 1 trillion seconds ago was 31,688 years ago, and we're 140 trillion in debt, and all of that debt accumulated at the lowest interest rates in human history. Things get very real every percent that we see rise in interest rates. You know, the federal funds rate was at 0% a few months ago. It's at 2.25%. So just raising interest rates by 2% on the $30 trillion debt increases, just that amount alone increases our obligations through just interest payments to creditors by almost $700 billion a year. We're entering a period of time where we won't have enough money even to pay the interest if you take all of the tax revenues that are received. And you may ask yourself, well, in this bill, why did they hire another 80,000 IRS officials specifically to do audits? That's several times as many Homeland Security agents and border agents that we have. I mean, you're talking, they're going to suck as much money out of the system as they possibly can, and we're their target. They recently came out with an article saying that the IRS feels that lower and middle income earners are easier to audit because they don't have the wherewithal to fight the audit, so they settle.
Jeez.
Wealthy people can just hire attorneys and fight it. You don't hire 80,000 new IRS auditors specifically focused on enforcement if you know you're not bleeding for money. So look, what do you say to people? You say that it's been a nice run, that we used to be a country that produced things, that manufactured things. We used to be a country that ran a surplus. We are now the largest debtor nation in the world. We don't produce anything. The world is angry at us. The world is coalescing against us. The BRICS nations represent nearly 90% of human population, and they just issued a new world reserve currency. Wait until they peg it to gold. Remember, we talked about gold being reclassified, the world's only other tier 1 reserve asset, meaning central banks look at it as riskless. They're accumulating it. So what do you say? It's a very difficult thing to convince people of, CJ, because we've all lived under the birthright that we deserve to live better than our parents did and our grandparents, and everyone in this country for the most part hasn't really lived through tough times. I think those times may actually change. And so I do believe that you can only save the world one person at a time, starting with yourself and your immediate family. What would I do? I would get out of all variable rate debt immediately. Do everything you can to pay off variable rate debt. I would start to accumulate gold and silver at every opportunity I could, even if it was only a few $100s worth a month. I would certainly have enough food and water, a gun, and the know-how to use it. these are all things that, you know, people who prepare are often ridiculed for. And, you know, I think when
Right.
things happen, you'll very quickly realize that that preparation was certainly good advice. And if not, you know, what if you're no worse off for the wear? So I don't know that you can open people's eyes. And this is why so few people actually succeed in investing. Most people follow the herd. It is the contrarian who stands out with the wind blowing on the limb all by himself or herself. And I do think that if you're not a contrarian, you will be a victim this time around. So, unfortunately, being a contrarian requires a little bit of education and conviction. You have to read and understand what your beliefs are contrary to. But it
Right.
also requires some courage because, you know, this is not something for the faint of heart. But I will tell you that I don't think people in this country are prepared even slightly because most
Mm-mm.
people don't even understand what is coming down the pike. And if you realize that we've lived for the past really 50 years well above our means simply by the good graces of our foreign creditors,
Yep.
and you could argue those good graces are starting to kind of idly flow by the wayside. I don't know exactly what you do to wake people up. I try every day and it's hard. And I cite facts. Now, a lot of the facts that I cite, I'm tying together with supposition. But I will simply tell you this, that when the most, when most of human population is moving away from the dollar and making no bones about it, it's all there for you to see if you look hard enough. I think that it's time to start to mitigate your exposure to the dollar, to traditional assets, get out of debt, accumulate assets. Liabilities will eat you, assets will feed you, and accumulate things, tangible things, removal of counterparty risk, and pay off some debt. Get out of credit card debt, get out of variable rate debt, because as interest rates rise, it becomes harder and harder and harder to service that debt. That's what you want to do. You want to let the laws of compounding interest work for you instead of against you.
Yeah, that's a good philosophy because I'm gonna speak for Trina and she can slap me around later, but I'm really good at having tangible things. I like my tangible things now, but so I need to get better. And I am a saver and I do have a pot, but it's hard when I used to say this. Okay, I hate even saying this, but I feel like we're just having coffee chat here because I'm sure there's people out here listening who are of the same mindset. So way back when, I know nothing about finances, nothing about managing money, nothing about nothing, right? And then there came a point in time as I became a young adult where at the time what the truth was and the reality was at the time, decades ago, when my father was a big investor and teaching me about money and teaching me about saving and teaching me about what stocks to buy and where to put this and where to put that. I thought that up until 4 years ago, I was like, man, I've learned so much. I became so knowledgeable about stock markets, about bonds, about interest, about 401ks, about what I can use, what I can't use, where to take money from, where to put this. I thought, where I talk to most people, especially single women my age, who, you know, aren't near as knowledgeable as I am or I was, by learning all of what I thought I had learned. And now that I learned that, now I'm having to relearn other things that may contradict some of that. And it's like, okay, now what? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure it does. And it's because really the distortion in everything that used to be true is centered around manipulation of interest rates. And by holding interest rates at artificially low levels for many years, not only have we created distortions and misallocations of capital and resources. As an example, corporations who assumed low interest rate environment forever would take on more debt, build bigger infrastructure, hire more people, And as rates rise, that may dramatically change. It's created distortions in asset prices, like housing prices that double in a year, equity markets that double in a year. These distortions are all a function of manipulation of interest rates. And it's also created distortions in the way people used to invest forever. Wall Street has a mantra of a 70-30 split, I believe, 70% stocks, 30% bonds. And as you get older, you transition more to bonds. And when I started in this industry, that was called risk on, risk off. Risk on being stocks, risk off being bonds, and they were inversely correlated to one another. So when people would get freaked out, the place they would move to would be bonds, or as they got older, they would move to bonds. So when I started in this industry in 1990, the interest rate on the 10-year Treasury was at 9%. So you could put $1 million into a 10-year Treasury and earn $90,000 a year. If you work all your life and you save, put away money, and at the end of retirement, you got $1 million, you put it into 10-year Treasuries, laddering technique, as it's called, you would earn $90,000 a year, tax-free, federally tax-free. Never touch your principal. Everyone could live on 90 grand a year to pay for your expenses. And that's what most of the wealthy people did. And government treasuries were considered riskless. But the manipulation of interest rates by holding them down for so long has created an environment where bonds and stocks have lost their inverse correlation. They are now positively correlated to one another and inversely correlated to a rise in rates. And so there is nowhere to hide. At 2.75% on the 10-year Treasury, that same $1 million would earn you $23,750 a year in interest. You can't live on that. So you would need to, in essence, you'd have to put in $4 million to earn the same amount that you did on $1 million. And so what's even worse about that is that pension funds and insurance companies and most everyone's portfolio consists of this 70-30 split. And, as rates rise, both stocks and bonds, and at the same time, the triple whammy, real estate, all take it on the chin. And so where the distortion comes from, or where the disconnection comes from, CJ, where you thought you understood things, right. It's because the artificial environment of super low interest rates. In fact, there's a couple dozen countries or more around the world that are negative interest rates, really negative nominal terms. So the difference between nominal and real, let's talk about that for 1 second. There are countries out there, most of them in Europe, that have a nominal rate that's negative. You put your money into a bank at negative 0.5%, you put in $100, you get back $99.50 at the end of the year. That's before inflation and anything else. Real rate negative is where you look at where we are here in the United States. We have a nominal rate of, call it 2.25% on the federal funds rate. When you factor it against inflation of 9%, the real rate then is negative 6.75%. So this is an environment, actually, 6.75%, real negative. The nominal rate is still positive, but there are countries out there that have negative nominal rates. So the point of it is that when you push interest rates and hold them down, and the reason they did that was to create an illusion of prosperity. Everyone feels rich when their house doubles, their 401k doubles, but these are not realistic markets. This is not a realistic environment where the cost of money was basically free. I mean, anyone who locked into a 3% mortgage right now with 9% inflation, it is, plus you factor in the tax deduction that you get for the mortgage, that money you're getting after the tax deduction might be at 1 or 1.5%. It's free money against 9% inflation. But the point of it is that those low interest rates, I don't think we'll ever see them again. And quite to the contrary, I think it goes dramatically the other direction. So the distortion, the confusion, all centers around, in my opinion, the fact, and that's why I said that hard to price discovery market that is void of price discovery because interest rates have been suppressed for so long and money creation has been so outrageous that all that money came in there borrowed at the lowest interest rates ever and looked for a place to go. Well, what better place to put it than to stocks, bonds, and real estate? Jack the prices to the moon, and they're the ones that are quietly exiting as everyone else is clinging to the last vestiges of this bull market and is clinging to recency bias, where the Fed never lets the shit hit the fan, right? They'll fix it, right? Well, maybe this time it's beyond their control.
Andy, I know we have a question here, and Trina, if you can keep that up, I wanna go down a very short little, not even a rabbit hole, a rabbit ditch. And if you want to put a lid on that ditch, or Trina, feel free to do so. But this is a question, and you might not have the answer to this, but
I see Mark's question. I have the answer to it. First of all, he's wrong.
Okay, yeah, answer that first, and then we'll go down the rest.
There is a difference in premium between generic 10-ounce bars and 10-ounce Royal Canadian Mint bars. Royal Canadian Mint 10-ounce bars are name brand, and they are the highest premium 10-ounce bars in the marketplace. The generic 10-ounce bars should be $1 or more an ounce less. The difference between silver rounds and maple leaf. So, I mean, the U.S. Mint, I'm a U.S. Mint distributor, one of 27 in the world, authorized resellers. Premiums on those are $13+ I'm buying them back for $10.25 over spot right now.
Oh, wow.
So they're outrageous and stupid. And the U.S. Mint is the model of inefficiency. The Canadian Mint is close second. Their premiums are north of $6. Inefficient. The Britannia from the United Kingdom, the Kangaroo from Australia, Philharmonic from Austria, and the Krugerrand from South Africa. Those are 4 of the 6 primary mints. Their coins are going to be about $1 higher than the generic rounds. For Mark's question, the difference between a generic round and a government-issued coin would be buying generic soda at Costco versus Kirkland brand versus 7-Up or Sprite or Dr. Pepper, whatever, Coke or Pepsi. In the end, if you're dying of thirst, they all drink the same. If you had your druthers, you might reach for the legal tender government sovereign mint issued coins, which are more of the name brand. In the end, they're the same amount of silver. And I think it's kind of like Kleenex versus normal facial tissue that you can buy. So is there a difference? Not in content, but in perception, perhaps. But to his point, on those 10-ounce bars, yes, the Royal Canadian Mint 10-ounce bars, if you're able to get them at a generic 10-ounce bar price, jump all over it because those are premium bars.
He agrees with you, Andy. I'll let you read that one.
Right on. I see. Well, thank you, Mark. Appreciate that.
Makes you feel good to get confirmation every now and then.
Well, look, you know what? I've done this for 33 years. We've done $7 billion in sales. We've never had a customer complaint ever. Try to Google it. You won't find one. And I'm very proud of our reputation. The Lord knows I've screwed up plenty, but when I do, I admit it. I am accountable and I make it right. So I'll never speak in a manner that is disingenuine to anybody. Disingenuous. I don't know if it's disingenuine or disingenuous. Well, anyways, close enough. And you know what I'm saying. I'll always be straight with people that I do business with. All my brokers will. In a world where people are looking for customer service, they're looking for realism, they're looking for honesty, integrity. That's our strong point. That's what we have always done well at, and accountability as well. So you'll find, unfortunately, in this industry, there's a lot of misinformation. This is a federally non-regulated industry. This is why I left my corporation in Minnesota, even though I moved to Florida. It would have saved me money to bring the corporate entity with me. I left it in Minnesota because we are beholden to the Commissioner of Commerce in the state of Minnesota with licensing, bonding, background checks every year. The licensing and the continuing education, the bonding, the annual background checks are enough to make most companies in America say, I'm out. I won't do business in Minnesota. Wow. We embrace it. And that means also that we are very, very diligent about trying to pass on the right information. And so I'll always be straight with you guys. That's the bottom line.
So can I give you my rabbit ditch?
Sure. Love to hear it.
Okay. So And Trina's heard me ask this question before, and I'm pretty sure that have not asked it to you yet. And again, I don't know that there's an answer, but according to, I don't even know if we know for sure, Truth Social, right? Being on the stock market and being tradable. I don't know if Trump owns it, or we've heard maybe that he's not behind it. I don't even know, right? But if it's associated with Trump and Trump is, the man behind it, and it's on the stock market and trading, because I bought some of it.
Bought what? I'm sorry. Bought what?
The truth stock when it first came out, before I was aware of a lot of things, right?
It's listed under some initials because
Right.
it's not under Truth
Correct.
Social is owned by a marketing company.
Right. It's under communication something, I think. But
Okay.
anyway, my point is, if the stock market's all supposed to go to shit and disappear, why and Trump is aware of this, and this is Trump's platform, and why is it on the trade? Why is it trading?
Well, I don't think, the market crashed in 1929, 1932. The number one performing stock in the entire stock market was home stake mining, and did very well, but everything else collapsed. I mean, there will be some winners in it. I don't know. I like rabbit holes, but I will tell you that I don't know the answer to this, simply to say that, you pull the plug on the market, everything is going to come tumbling down, but there will be winners. There will be companies that are positioned well to take advantage of this situation. Look, what a recession, depression, collapse is Mother Nature's way of cleansing the system,
right,
of all of these misallocations, these distortions. In Austrian economics, it's called the crack up boom, where all of this money and all of this credit creates all of these distortions. There will be companies that are properly positioned to pick up the pieces. And maybe really what is behind it is the ability to disseminate real, truthful information to the people. Maybe his particular platform there, once everything breaks. I don't know. I do believe that there is, when you talk about rabbit holes, there's a fine line between conspiracy and reality. And the term Occam's razor always comes to mind, which is the most logical answer typically prevails when you're confronted with, an unknown. It's the most logical answer that prevails.
Right.
So one of the things that's very difficult when you talk about that subject is so many of the things that are brought up relating to President Trump are supposition. They're unfounded. We like to believe them to be true. We don't know.
Right.
This is the fine line between conspiracy and reality. Is it true? Is it not true? Sure, sounds like it could be true.
Right.
I don't know. But I will say that when it breaks, there will be winners. There will be more losers than winners. But some companies will be positioned to do very well, as other companies who, in the environment that we have lived through with low interest rates and easy money, have well overextended themselves, have nothing in the way of equity, are far too indebted, far too over leveraged. And maybe this is an all cash company that is positioned perfectly to swoop in and take over when others in the space have, all of which who have treated him so poorly, vaporized. So I don't know. Again, I'm just giving, pontification, but
Because I was just always curious about that. I don't know.
It's fair point.
I want to address something that we've had several of our listeners, after watching you on our show, have mentioned. Everybody is in dire straits. You come out of the COVID factor of a lot of people being ill over the last couple of years.
Yep.
And the job market just spiraled all over the place. I mean, we both know that a ton of restaurants shut down, and even the ones that came back, it was hard for their employees to pick up. I mean, some of them ended up quitting even though they had a job because they were so understaffed. They got treated poorly by the patrons. And so, I mean, it's just been a mess everywhere. And I have a lot of people go, how do you expect me to buy silver or gold when I can't even like buy groceries?
Right.
And I get that. But what I would love to say to everyone is I was a single mom, and it was back when I made a whopping $24,000 a year. I was blessed to have a company car, so my insurance was paid and didn't have as many bills as I do now currently. But I can tell you that my daughter and I lived with, I could buy a box of Velveeta, it'd last 2 weeks, a package of hot dogs, I could freeze a couple of them, and we could live off of those 2 weeks, thawing a little bit at a time. We had things that we did like that. And I made it that hard on us, even more so because I had a special fund put back for our vacation and then for savings. And no matter what, even if I ate a package of 25-cent crackers and a 25-cent, at that time, you could get a can of lemonade out of a Coke machine because she's 35 years old. Yes, I'm telling on myself now. But I could live on that because I knew the future I wanted for her. And as a single mom, nobody was going to pay for me a vacation for her. And it was not going to be that I was going to be a statistic and raise her as a statistic that a single teenage mom had to have a child that was going to have a poor lifestyle because of my bad choices. And I'm not harping on anybody. I'm just telling you that I found $5 a week that made me have $20 a month. And then if I happen to sell our have a garage sale or like her really nice outfits, we didn't have Facebook back then, but I would sell them to someone else. I found ways that I found money. And if it's important to you to have you some solid currency, because I'm just telling y'all, we are at the point in America that you're going to wake up and go to the bank and you can get your dollars out, but we're going to be able to go to a store if something doesn't get changed and they're going to be of no value because you're going to have $5 you drew out of the bank to go buy a gallon of milk and it's went up to $25. At some point, solid metal is going to be more important to us if things don't change than a dollar bill. And
no, I mean, I'd say God bless you for that, for doing what's right. That's fantastic. Look, this is all I know, and I understand. I understand where the listener is coming from. My advice is to pay yourself first.
yes,
It's easy for me to say that after 33 years, but it's fair to note that when you talk about finding a way to make it work, finding a way to pay yourself first, to save, which is really important. It's something that I constantly do. I am a save-aholic. But and I often say this in podcasts, not that often. Once in a while, I'll talk about the fact that, my family comes from nothing. I mean, literally nothing. My parents sold their life insurance policies, and we borrowed $60,000 from the Franklin and Miles Franklin. My dad's middle name is Miles. We started in a one-room office the size of a closet in 1989 on a wing and a prayer. I always learned to pay myself first. Like I probably told you the very first day we did a show, the only rule that I had imposed upon me as a 19-year-old kid starting a company with my dad, who was a hippie in the 70s and has a background in history, one of the most unlikely cast of characters to ever succeed in this industry. But we did. And he said, you will save every 2 weeks. You'll put something away, or the first paycheck you don't, you're fired. And I've lived by that for 33 years. I've been the owner and president of the company for 2 decades. He's been retired. He's still my partner, retired. But I've honored my promise to him. He's not going to fire me anymore, but I've honored my promise. And I put something away every 2 weeks. I have for 33 years. I've never missed a 2-week period, ever.
Wow,
and there were times when I started, I remember going to my mom and with a stack of bills and saying, if you don't help me, I cannot pay my utility bills. So, I mean, I know from where this type of rhetoric comes from. We are, I guess you could say, emblematic of the American dream. I'd like to think it's still out there. But I will tell you, I would not be where I am today had I not always taken that advice from my father, which was really the only thing he ever gave me besides an opportunity.
So,
The best advice anyone's ever given me: pay yourself first, no matter what,
Yep.
even if it's 1 ounce of silver.
well,
Yeah.
that was my question. My question is kind of twofold because you mentioned a couple of things, so I want to get your perspective on this. So you say pay yourself first.
Yeah, that's right.
What
That means
does
save.
right? I understand what you're saying, but again, this is a question kind of for our viewers or anybody out there that's in this situation with Trina so humbly shared is when you say pay yourself first. I get it. It's like put $10 aside, put $10 aside. I get that. But now if we're not talking green paper money, you can't go just buy $10 worth of silver. You got to save that $10, save that $10, save that $10 till you go, save 10 $10 bills and go buy $100 of silver if that's what you're referring to. So when you say pay yourself first, are you talking and paying yourself first in green money to save?
Anyway, I mean, if that's the only way that you can get there, one step at a time, then that's the path you have to walk. So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think you should, and you should have. Everyone should have a little bit of small bill spare money laying around the house for
Right.
an emergency, because you know, if the ATMs dry up and there was a problem with
Right.
the internet and you couldn't use your credit cards, I mean, how do you transact? And so you should have cash and you should have some silver. And you know, if it's $100 every month or two, you do what you can.
So this will be my last question along these lines. You said pay yourself and pay your variable rate debt or get out of debt. If somebody is in a financial position such as Trina was at one point in time in her season of life, which does somebody do pay first? If they're living on a credit card, like living on a credit card outside of maybe paying their rent or their mortgage, but their clothes, their groceries, their medical expenses, do they pay their variable rate, get their credit card down first, or do they pay themselves first?
Pay themselves first and then pay the debt. I mean, it should not be a one or the other deal, or you have way too much credit card debt. And I don't say that to be, insensitive, but the way the credit card bills are structured, um, the law of 70 seconds, the mathematical law. Why do you think credit card bills are typically at 18%?
No, I
18
get it.
times 4 is 72. You just pay the minimum rate. The law of 70 seconds says you take the interest rate divided into 72, tells you how long before your principal doubles. In 4 years, just paying the minimum rate, your principal doubles. You never touched the principal. You just paid interest, and now you owe twice as much as you did 4 years earlier. So
Right.
it's very important. Don't not misunderstand me. It is hugely important to pay off that debt, especially in a rising interest rate environment. But if you don't start somehow,
Right.
you never get ahead. So I would say pay yourself first, and then pay off that debt. So this is a hard question. It's a hard
Well, I know,
question to
and I asked
answer,
that
but
too
that's what I would do.
and I asked that too from a very selfish perspective, being a single mom, because I use credit cards. I mean, I don't have $50,000 worth of credit card debt, but I use credit cards and I have some credit card debt, and I pay my credit cards more than the minimum, more than half of that, and I also live my debt. So, I know there's people out there in situations that are way worse than mine, because I'm very blessed. I know there are people that are, in a situation where Trina at once was. And I think for them hearing this, they would love to be able to pay themselves first and be able to say, hey, I've got $300 worth of gold bars sitting there in case I need them. And so I think it's good for them to have a strong opinion or a strong sense of guidance as to what to do. And then obviously they can make whatever decisions that, but a lot of people don't even get this conversation or this guidance to even have this banter back and forth, because they don't pay a financial advisor. They don't have millions of dollars to invest if they get one-on-one financial guidance or counsel. So, these questions and these things I think are very, very beneficial for a lot of the people in the audience. So I'm grateful that even though you're here to talk about gold and silver and investing in that, because that's what you do, right? And you're all for that, and that's why we have you on. Your commentary and your answers to these other questions related to finances, I think, are really, really important for people who are listening, who are considering, can I make this investment? What do I do? What do I do first, the chicken or the egg? So I appreciate you giving your thoughts as a money guy to everybody listening, because we don't know everybody's individual situations.
No, and I get that. I totally get it. But it's like quitting smoking or going on a diet or working out or whatever it is
Right.
you want to do. You start with your end goal and work backwards. And if you don't take the first step in a journey, you never get there. So, and that's why I say selfishly, pay yourself first. And even if it meant writing letters to your creditors or to the credit card company, hey, I'm going to pay you $10 a month or whatever I can do to get out of this, and just know that I will. But if you don't first take care of yourself, you wake up one day and 3-4 years has gotten by and you still haven't even taken that first step. So I think that's very important. You got to find balance in the way that you mitigate your debt exposure and the way that you pay yourself first. But as a rule of thumb, do it or you'll never get to where you're going. And I can tell you that it is the single greatest gift that I've ever been given, is the knowledge of the importance of savings and time. Life is like a roll of toilet paper. When you're young, you don't notice it spinning so much.
Exactly.
But as you get older, it starts to spin. You start to realize that the cardboard tube is not too far away. So I'm not trying to, grandiose here, but simply to say that if you don't start and you don't hold steadfast to any commitment that you make, you'll never get there.
We did, we went through, not that I'm throwing the name out there, but just for anybody that is looking for a good program, we went through Dave Ramsey's.
I did too.
Okay. And we had the envelope system, and we taught Noah, my son. He and my daughter and him are 13 years apart. And so I know she watched me save and do certain things, but we had the envelopes for him. And every week we gave him a certain amount, and we taught him how to put, his 10% for his tithe in an envelope, and then pay himself 10%. And then he had a certain amount. So we had it all set up. And I would suggest that anyone that doesn't understand that, there's probably a ton of information on YouTube and stuff. Search it out, find what works for you. But if you have $20 at the end of a month, and then you get another $20, then you have 40, you need to get in touch with Andy, get you a little bit of something solid to hold on to have, because number one, your children can inherit silver and gold, and it's only going to go up. I mean, that's just something solid. If you don't use it, or you can sell it back, and hopefully with the increase on it, you're going to make a gain on it instead of just what you bought it at. Whereas dollar bills right now, if you leave those stuck in the bank, good luck making anything on it. I mean, back in the day when I was a little kid, we all had savings accounts because you made, 6 or 8% if they had set it up right for you. Well, I don't know that that's even possible anywhere that it's that much. And so I'm just throwing that suggestion out because
that's exactly what I was saying. And that's smart, sage advice. You paid yourself and you paid your obligations, but you were in that equation first. And so that's what I mean. Never have an envelope without your name written on it is kind of the moral of the story, because you're more important than, and I don't mean to be, this won't come across the right way, but there's no other way to say it. You're more important than the credit card company is. Yes, you're the one who got yourself into this position, and I get it. So you have an obligation to pay off your debt, to do it responsibly. But if you don't take care of yourself first, no one ever will. And that's the one lesson that I learned. And I try to impart it upon all the people that work for me. and you know what, when you do that over time, maybe some of the people out there can buy 10 ounces of silver a month, whatever, at the end of the year, you got 120 ounces, and whoa, where'd that come from? And, do that for 10 years. And now you got, 1,200 ounces. And so
yeah,
it's as simple as that. And when you get a little bit extra, put a little bit more in, pay a little more debt off, do what you can. But it's important. And I think it's something that, I don't know, I consider it to be top 2 or 3 greatest life lessons I've ever learned.
yes. Not to take anything away from the great conversation that we're having, but I do want to put a plug in for Miles Franklin. We had an experience to where my husband and I, that's what we bought each other for our 26th wedding anniversary, is we invested in a little bit of silver. And Andy did a great job taking care of us. We got our package in the mail, and they were going to be really picky, that I had to have someone over 21 to sign for it. And it was coming when I was leaving to go out of town. And just so happened that the day before, the UPS guy brought me something. And I said, listen, my dog sitter is going to be here and she's a little under 21. You got to leave my package. Do not take my package back. It's very important to me. So since I know my UPS guy, he goes, no, I got this. You're good, since I give him permission. But they were very picky. They were not going to just leave my package with anybody. And Miss Pat over here, she said that she had a great experience purchasing from y'all, and she was very pleased with her services. So I'm just encouraging all of you, even if it's $50, 50,000, it doesn't matter. Send an email, put mine or CJ's referral on there, and let them take care of you, because our experiences are being proven very it's very good. That's all I can say, is when you can call people, you can actually have a conversation with them. You get an email back in, 2 hours, not 2 days, not 10 days, and it doesn't go to your spam file. That's a nice thing. So considering what our world is right now, customer service is slacking in so many areas, and they are not.
I appreciate that very, very much. And I do want people to know that sometime this month, the next few weeks, we expect to open up our new website, which will allow for online purchasing up to $10,000 is what we're thinking.
Nice.
And of course, the backbone of our whole ethos, if you will, is the relationship. That won't change. Certainly you don't have to purchase online and pay credit card fees. You're certainly always willing, or able rather, we're willing to have conversations to educate people. That's really what we like to think is our responsibility. If we do a good job educating, then the business will come. Our prices will always be fair, or amongst the very best in the country, if not the best. But we'll never deviate too far from our roots. I know that a lot of people want the ability to buy online, and so we are we're making it something that, we're making it, we're acquiescing to that demand, but we're kind of going to be a hybrid. So anything over 10,000 or any amount, you can call and speak with the representative, but that'll be soon. And you'll each have your own landing pages. It would be something to the extent of milesfranklin.com/CJ or whatever, however you want it to be. But your listeners will be able to do that. In the meantime, don't be bashful. This is who we are and what we do and what we've done forever. And we have all different sizes of clients, those who have enough to buy a few $100s worth, those that have enough to buy thousands of dollars worth, or whatever. But we treat everyone the same, always will, and are eager to talk to your listeners for sure.
Awesome. And we want to make sure everyone knows that CJ and I, we love each other a lot, but we're not your financial gurus. Nope. We don't make recommendations for you to do anything that's out of your comfort zone, and you need to get real financial advice on some of this stuff, because Andy has the background. Andy can back up what he's talking about. And me and CJ, we just talk about each other's stuff a lot. So we're putting the disclaimer out there that We're not your girls. We love you and we'll hook you up with the right people, but we're not your girls. My Andy, I almost called you Miles just because it's in front of my face and I keep seeing it scroll at the bottom of the screen. When I
No
take your
problem.
name off, it messes me up. But Andy will be back every other Wednesday evening with us. And if I'm alone tomorrow night, I may call him and see if he wants to do Thirsty Thursday. But anything else, CJ?
I'm good. I'm so grateful for, like I said, your input. Like I said before, I think this is specifically great for those who don't have any other financial guidance out there. So I'm grateful for you taking the type of questions that I asked that were really, just general questions. So thank you.
For sure. No, that's great. I think that the general financial questions are really the most important questions. I typically, when I do public speaking, I don't even talk about buying gold and silver ever. It's just assumed that that's what we do. But I try to show you, it's like purchasing a new car. Coming to grips with spending the money to buy a new car is the hard part, and the part that you have to really think about. Picking out the make and the model, well, that's the fun part, right? So that's the easy part. My job is to open people's eyes to the why. The what, that's the easy part. But the why is most important, and everything is interrelated to it nowadays. So it's my pleasure. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. I see,
Awesome.
I know I see a bunch of questions in here, and I think we're gonna be ending. And I think Trina, if you don't mind praying us out tonight, but I see some Intel questions there, and tonight was a financial piece, so we're not going to get into the Intel stuff. I'm sure Trina, and if I'm on tomorrow night, I don't know. We'd be happy to talk a little bit about some Intel before we get into funny stuff tomorrow night, because I do see a couple questions coming through. So. We hope you guys all learned a great deal tonight. I think each time we have Andy on, I take at least one or two little notes. I go, "Oh, I didn't hear that before. Oh, I didn't hear that before." And I keep, it's almost like when you read a book or you're learning something, for whatever. Each time you pick up a little new nugget. And I think with this being, our second live conversation with Andy. I mean, that's what's happening for me. So I encourage you all, when we have him back on again, just to have a little notepad, and each time you might pick up a nugget or two that you may be able to apply. So that's all I got.
Awesome. Well, it was great to be with you both, and I'll look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. And
All right.
Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks so much.
You're
Night,
welcome.
we forgot to pray.
Go ahead.
All right. Heavenly Father, we give you glory and honor. We thank you for this amazing day and this place and history that we're standing in, Lord, that we are bringing the wealth of the wicked and we are returning it to the righteous by having the right mindset and the things that are happening around us in the world. And God, we just pray blessings on each and every ear that ever hears this. We pray for health and wealth and so many things for each and every one of them. God, touch their lives and let them know that you are El Shaddai and that Yeshua was sent here to save us for all the sins that we've ever committed, and that by his blood we have a hedge of protection. We pray for our military. We pray for our rightful president, and we ask you just to protect each and every person. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Awesome. Thanks, you guys.
All right, y'all.
Welcome. Good night.
You take care.